Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. The Falcons had a critical matchup in Tampa Bay to take a stranglehold on the division, and they got the job done. Now, it was far from the prettiest thing. The way that they won the game was far from pretty. You know, they should have won this game probably 31-10, 31-13. It shouldn't even have been close. They dominated the game a lot like they did against the Commanders, yet once again, 3 turnovers from Desmond Ridder, this time all fumbles, kept the Bucs in the game. Luckily, Richie Grant came up with a huge interception. I think that was the best game he's played all season. Really big play from him. The defense was able to hold them from getting in the end zone and allowed the Falcons offense to have that game-winning drive. But let's focus. We'll talk a lot about this game in several segments. So let's focus on the big thing here, and that is Desmond Ridder. There was a lot of good in this game, just like last week. The opening drive, best opening drive. We talked about the Commanders was the best opening drive. This was a very similar scripted drive. He knew where to go. It was perfect. They score a touchdown. You come out and you're like, oh, Desmond Ridder, he's on his game again. Then he hit Scotty Miller on the next possession for, I think, was his best throw of the entire season on a deep ball, which was a perfect dot down the middle. It only leads to a field goal. But he ends up the day with 250 yards, 19 of 25 against a good defense. He delivers his third game-winning drive. So there was a lot of good, especially when you consider that game-winning drive came after mistakes from him. That fumble that he had, inexcusable. The one that led to the touchdown that should have put the game on ice, should have been done right there. Obviously, the snap, I don't know who you blame, but you probably give the quarterback blame. Like, it might not have been a good snap. You just can't let that happen. But those kind of mistakes are so fixable. Like, if either one of those things happens again this year, I would be shocked. Like, I don't think Desmond Ridder, after that happened, it will ever lackadaisically go into the end zone with the ball in his wrong hand again. I don't think he'll probably fumble a snap the whole game. Yes, he should have ate the ball on the first turnover and just taken his medicine, kicked the field goal before half. So there were mistakes. But let's not act like we're not watching tangible improvement as a passer. He's now averaging 300 yards over the last 3 games. If you had told me he was going to do that after week 4, I would have called you. I would have said, what drugs are you on? This guy can't throw for 300 yards, let alone average 300 yards against a couple of decent defenses over 3 weeks. So I got to say, I'm sitting here on this Sunday, especially after a win. Maybe I would have felt a little bit differently if the Falcons hadn't won the game. As confident as I've been in Desmond Ridder in a long time. Now, the mistakes have to be fixed, but we might have a guy who could be an NFL starting quarterback.
I said it last week after the Commanders' performance, and I got some pushback for obvious reasons. I'm going to say everything, and it's going to end with a but. He was excellent in most facets against the Commanders, and once again was very, very good against the Buccaneers. And the Commanders' defense isn't quite what the Buccaneers is, but the Bucs are a very, very good defense. You could argue they're a top 10 unit in most facets of the game. And Desmond Ridder looked poised. He looked under control. He never looked out of sorts for most of the game. He looked like he knew where he was going. He never got out of the system, whereas last week against the Commanders, we kind of saw him improvise, which is where most of the things in the NFL go wrong, especially with a young quarterback, especially with the third round, practically rookie quarterback. He played within the system. When things broke down, he threw it away. He didn't panic and try to extend the play like we had seen him do before and eventually make costly mistakes. So those are the improvements that, to your point, we want to see. We don't want to see him continually make the same mistakes. Mistakes are inevitable, especially for a quarterback, especially for a third-round rookie, practically rookie quarterback. Mistakes are inevitable. The only thing you want to see is him make new mistakes that he hasn't already made. He is learning from the past mistakes. Mistakes are going to come, and they're going to continue to come for the rest of the season. You just want him to make different mistakes at the end of the year than he was at the beginning of the year. And I think you're starting to see that. I think you're starting to see the fruit of Arthur Smith's labor, where Arthur Smith is continuing saying, Desmond Ridder's working. We're working through it. He's making mistakes, but he's not shying away from the mistakes. He's looking at himself in the mirror. What do I do? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And what can I do moving forward to not do the same things wrong? And I think the Bucs game was a perfect example of that. Most of the mistakes, the fumbles, the 3 fumbles that he had were generally mistakes that we hadn't seen him make before. And to your point, 2 of them are correctable Monday morning, one conversation. with one conversation with Arthur Smith, to your point, they should never happen again. A fumbled snap, generally, anything can really happen. Drew Dahlman, I tend to think it wasn't Drew Dahlman on this particular instance. Let's not fight about it. But going forward, botch snaps are, tend to happen depending, game circumstances, weather, if Drew Dahlman's having a bad game. It takes two to tango with snapping the ball. So I won't necessarily hold that against Ridder and say that he, is not going to make that same mistake again. But the touchback fumble should absolutely not happen again. I think Ridder immediately acknowledged what happened on that play. It was an RPO, and he had it in his right hand because he thought he still wanted to throw it. By the time he got down the line, past the line of scrimmage, he was running the ball. Sure, he should have transferred it over. The guy's not a running back or wide receiver. Maybe that's just not natural in his brain, muscle memory type thing. But I guarantee you it doesn't happen again. And as far as what you pointed out, the first turnover, the Shaq Barrett sack fumble, that is absolutely something. When you feel the pocket closing in on you, there is a time and a place to step up, take one on the chin, and complete a pass. But there's also a time and place where you just tuck the ball and take the sack, take the points. And that just comes with experience, which, again, Desmond Ridder has been improving. Now, with that being said, I did want to say there was all that, but these turnovers aren't, though they are new turnovers, they are not new. He has been turning the ball over too often. He's sometimes reckless with the ball, whether it's, a easily fixable mistake or not. Turning the ball over is how you lose games, especially in the red zone. Thank goodness for Baker Mayfield being Baker Mayfield and throwing a red zone interception, because we could be having a much different conversation today had the Falcons lost on Sunday. We're not having that conversation, but it's clear that Ridder needs to do a better job protecting the ball. There is no arguments about that, whether they're fixable mistakes or not. He has got to protect the ball better. It's the name of the game, especially with young quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to protect the ball better. But I like I said, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the bad, because if he doesn't protect the ball, he's not going to be a starting quarterback in the league. And I think that's, just a slam door case. Like, there's just not, like, if he doesn't do better, we're not going to win games. We're going to blow games. We should have beaten the Commanders. We definitely should have beaten the Bucs by 2 or 3 scores. And obviously we come away one in one of those games, one that just shouldn't have been nearly as close. So yeah, if he doesn't stop turning the ball over, but at the same time, I just keep thinking it back and everything he did right. And he played a really, really good Bucs defense. And how many first-year starting quarterbacks, which is really what Ridder is, go out there after the mistakes that he's made, after everything that's gone bad, just kind of suck it up, say, hey, we're in this position partly because of me. I gotta check myself, and then come down with less than a minute to go against a good defense and lead a game-winning drive, his 3rd of the season. There's a lot. Like, I am more confident than Desmond Ridder could be the guy than I ever have been before. And yes, the turnovers have to be. I just think these mistakes that he made on Sunday were just like, I don't think those are mistakes that are going to happen again. Now, if they keep happening, I'll be wrong and whatever. I'm more concerned with the staring down the receivers, which he did again a couple times on Sunday, and then the bad passes. I'm much more concerned with what we saw against the Commanders popping up than what we saw against the Bucs. But I'm just impressed overall with his overall improvement. I mean, after week 4, we talked about how he'd had 8 starts and we had seen no improvements. And that was 100% fact. And that's when we were actually legitimately questioning how long before we saw Taylor Heineke. After these last 3 weeks, we've now seen improvement. Like, he is a much better quarterback than he was just 3 weeks ago. And if he could stop cutting down on his turnovers, the Falcons might be cooking something here, because we'll talk about it at a later segment. But this defense needs to be up there and talked about as one of the best in the league, not just top 10, I mean, it can be mentioned along any defense in football. Now, they might not be the best, but they're up there, and they do everything right? What do they not? They pressure the quarterback. The sacks are starting to come. We had 3 yesterday. We had 5 against the Commanders. We talked about how they were going to come. They get off the field on 3rd down. They hold teams to points in the red zone. They don't give up rushing yards. I mean, they do everything. It's like, for Falcons fans, it's got to feel like a fever dream. We haven't seen this in 20 years. They do everything right. And Ryan Nielsen, man, I know, like, defensive coordinators aren't as coveted when talking about head coaches, but if this keeps up, he's going to be talked about as a potential head coach in this league.
Before we talk about that more extensively, I want to say one last thing about Desmond Ridder. And, Falcons fans need to get it through their heads. Whichever way you land on this Desmond Ridder performance against the Bucs, I see people still bashing him, which is, very valid. The turnovers are inexcusable. You cannot turn the ball over, especially in the red zone 3 times. That is, I can't, winning the game despite 3 red zone turnovers has got to be some, I promise there's some stat out there that hasn't happened since 1971 when the Steelers beat somebody because the steel curtain defense. It's going to be something like that. That doesn't happen too often. With that being said, Desmond Ridder is going to have a lot more downs and a lot more ups. This is a roller coaster. This is just what it is with the first-year starter, especially a third-round pick. There's going to be a lot more bad. There's going to be a lot more good. We just kind of have to, file through what are the things that he is continually messing up on and things that he is continually improving on, because that's to me, it's the development. As long as he's doing this and making new mistakes as the year progresses, we're fine at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and then you gotta put everything into perspective. Look around the league, not even just the first-year quarterbacks. Like, quarterbacks make mistakes in this league very often. There's only a few guys in the league that very rarely make mistakes. There's only a few guys in this league that lead game-winning drives with less than a minute left to go. And there's a lot less with less than 1 year of starting experience that don't make mistakes and lead game-winning drives with less than a minute to go. Because look, Bryce Young has made mistakes. We know he's super talented. He doesn't have a lot of talent around him. I still think he's going to be very good. Even CJ Stroud makes mistakes. Like, everyone makes mistakes as first-year starters. There's very few guys that come into the league and do not make first-year starter mistakes, especially a guy that you drafted in the 3rd round that you knew was going to be a project. I am happy because my expectations were not up here where I was like, oh, we're going to make this huge, long playoff run. My expectations, and we've talked about this throughout the offseason, has always been about improvement. Have we seen improvement? Through the first 8 starts, I'm not sure if we saw any. But these last 3, we finally are seeing something, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I couldn't say my better myself, but let's not get the facts twisted. The reason why Falcons are winning games is because of the defense, which I'm sure we'll talk about next.
Let's talk about the defense in the next segment coming out of the break. We're going to talk about this Falcons defense. Elite.